As the Great War raged on throughout Europe, the Central Powers were being pushed back by the Allies. Germany had retreated from France and Poland back to German soil. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire had collapsed, and the Ottomans were near destruction. The Germans knew that shortly the Allies would surround them. They had no choice but to surrender. On November 11th, 1918, the German Empire surrendered to the Allies. Now the political battles would begin. Allied countries from around the world gathered in the city of Versailles in France, 10 miles outside of Paris. They discussed the punishments that Germany should face because of the damage done by the war. Countries like France, who shared a land border with Germany, wanted to weaken them as much as possible. The French Prime Minister, Georges Clemenceau, wanted Germany to pay for all the war debt and for all the land taken by Germany in the war to be given back to the country it belonged to. America is far away, protected by the ocean. Not even Napoleon himself could touch England. You are both sheltered, we are not. George Clemenceau told President Woodrow Wilson of the United States and Prime Minister David Lloyd George of Great Britain. Great Britain's Prime Minister David Lloyd George believed in restoring the German economy so that Britain's economy would not suffer. David also believed that Germany should return the occupied land and pay for most of the war debt. President Woodrow Wilson arrived at the peace conference in Paris December 18, 1918, prepared to change the way the world thinks about one another. Wilson proposed the 14 points, which would call for many changes to the treaty. The first point was no private international understandings. This would allow the public to view what their country was doing politically. The second point says freedom of navigation, so all countries could use the seas to trade with one another in peace and war alike. The third point is the equality of trade conditions, so that all countries could trade with each other fairly. The fourth point calls for arms to be reduced in all countries. The fifth point states that all colonies should be set free from their mother country. Points 6 through 13 were about territory issues and the restoration of small countries that Germany had occupied throughout the war. The final and maybe most important point of the treaty was the League of Nations. The League of Nations introduced the idea of all nations working together to help each other. This idea was not taken lightly and was kept out of the treaty because of other countries debating that it would only increase tensions between countries. After all the debating, only 4 of the 14 points were implemented into the treaty. Finally, after almost 7 months of heated debate and arguments, the Treaty of Versailles was signed and the war to end all wars was over, or so we thought. Right after the treaty was put into effect, the German economy was suffering. Many people were going hungry and the government was becoming weak. When Germany was at its lowest point, a politician named Adolf Hitler took his opportunity to ascend to power in Germany. He became the prime minister and promised to restore Germany to its full glory. Hitler started disobeying the Treaty of Versailles, and on September 1st, 1939, Hitler started World War II by invading Poland. All in all, the Treaty of Versailles was a short-term success, but in the long run it would lead to the most deadly war in history.